Today I'm going to be answering a question from Instagram and kind of expanding on that. And the question was, where do you get your inspiration for your characters from? And at first I wrote down like a few little like bullet points, but the truth is like there's a lot of things that influence my artwork and my characters in general, so I thought that I would kind of dive into those. If you follow me on Instagram, you may know that I used to have a bunny named Pocket, and she undoubtedly was a huge inspiration for my bunny characters. And when I got her, I just saw how full of personality she was, and just so funny and obviously adorable. And so I was kind of inspired to start doing some more animal characters. I had been drawing animals for a while, but I'm not really like in a character form. It's something that I wanted to do actually for a while, but when I was in college, there was no like illustration department or anything, so everything was pretty much expected to be like fine art. So if I wanted to do something that I felt like would be more illustration-y, I was always worried that it wouldn't feel serious enough. I mean, and sometimes I would get critiques from my teachers like, well, what's the meaning behind this? So I kind of put it off for a while, but finally I allowed myself to try to draw some animal characters in Hawaii when we lived there, and they got really popular, and it was my first thing on my online shop that really like took off and sold. So it was really affirming for me to feel like the thing that I had been wanting to do was actually something that people really enjoyed to see from me and to see me making. So but from that point I had pretty much started drawing some bunny characters, and they were very much like real bunnies. Like what I would do is I would go on Instagram and I would kind of reference the pose of a bunny on there and maybe change like their coloration and stuff, and then put like a backpack on them. And so that kind of, you know, was more of like a slightly more realistic version of my animal characters now, because I do have my bunnies a little bit more upright. So something I wanted to talk about is my process for how I determined the way that my animal characters would look, which is something that is still developing and changing all the time, and who knows, in a few years things may look really different, but that's just part of the artistic journey. So I wanted to show you guys a few books that I have that kind of helped me to go through and think about the process of what I want my animal characters to look like, and also help give me some inspiration. The first thing I want to show you guys is my mammal guide. A lot of the time when I want to draw an animal character, maybe I don't know what kind I want to draw, so I look through this to get some inspiration of some that might not come to my head, you know, just right immediately. But also I like to come to this because, say I know that I want to do a chipmunk character, I might come to this and look at what kind of habitat they live in, what they eat, what their behavior is like, and sometimes that can help to influence what my character will be like. So as you can see, this is the Field Guide of North American Mammals. And I do have a few other field guides as well, but this one is the Peterson Field Guide if you're interested. But it goes through by animal, different types of animals, different species, things like that. Rodent section. There's even like a section of sea mammals like seals and whales and things like that. So that's really, really cool. And I actually have a guide that's just focused on ocean mammals. But I'm still working on creating characters from things like whales, because they are a little bit more difficult, I think, to figure out, like, am I going to put clothes on them? Do they hold things? How does it work? So that's a challenge I've been trying to kind of approach lately. But in the back of this field guide, it'll show you, so let's see, this is the Allegheny wood rat, and it shows you where, here, where their range is. It tells you how big they are, the sounds they make, their habitat, and their habits. So yeah, this provides a lot of inspiration. Okay, so then comes the issue of how do I want to draw their bodies? So at first I started doing things very realistically, you know, like I was saying with, you know, a squirrel, say, like in a pose just like that, but with, you know, a scarf and a backpack. But I started kind of thinking about the different options, because you have a lot of options. You can draw animals with human bodies and animal heads, so maybe like the defining features of a squirrel, like its little pointy ears and its big fluffy tail, but its body is like a human. And I have this book about the art of Zootopia that I got a few years ago for a birthday gift for my husband, and this has been a great book for seeing the process that the creators of the movie went behind making their characters and all the different versions that they try. And this was actually where I first read about what they had to kind of conquer with having all these different types of animal characters. Like, how do their clothes lie on their body? Like I said before, when I was doing the animals more realistically, I was pretty much just putting the backpacks and stuff on realistic bunnies. But then, you know, when it comes to things like porcupines, how do you handle that? Sheep, you know, how do you make them stand upright? And there's multiple ways that you can do that. And this book is really fun for looking at some of the ways that they tackled that issue. Yeah, so I do like to reference things like this. You can see that they drew, you know, Judy Hopps a way different way than I draw my bunnies. They gave her longer legs, longer arms. Of course, she has to go through a whole range of motion in this movie, which, you know, even if you're making a storybook, you might have to consider, can my character do a cartwheel with that type of body? Can they fly? Can they do all the things that they're going to need to do in the story? But they still kept her overall, like, bunny feeling by making her a little bit, like, more curvaceous in the back, because bunnies do carry their weight on the bottom half of their bodies. Her ears are very expressive, very bunny-like. Her feet and different, you know, little personality, nose wiggling things and stuff that she does. So, yeah, so that's just something to think about. Another reference that you probably will not be surprised by is Beatrix Potter. I've looked at her illustrations when I was trying to determine the way that I like to draw animals. There are things like, you know, do you have a fox on its tippy toes, or do you have its feet be flat? Or like a fox might be like that, but a bunny might not be. Okay, so when I was in between drawing my bunnies fully like real rabbits and then merging to having them in more clothing and things like that, I did have them up more on their tippy toes like that fox I just showed you. But Beatrix has them more just like plump and round, and like if a rabbit was periscoping, like standing up. They don't always go up on their tippy toes. And they do have a really cute, lovable, plump kind of look like this, which in the end is what I wanted to end up going with. Now, there are exceptions to this. Like here, he's up on his tiptoes. So, you know, as you're drawing them moving around, there might be things that you might change, but this is just another one of my references. So that was a bit about how I have developed my style of the way that I draw animals, as well as where I get some of my inspiration from. But to expand on the whole inspiration aspect of it, I get inspiration from the animals themselves. Like I said in my mammal guide, I love to watch squirrels out my window. Any kind of animal that I get to observe is very exciting to me, and I do like to know a little bit about them, and just to gain more of an appreciation. And then also just from my life experiences, a lot of the time I'll draw something that is something I wish I could be doing. Something that I have done. I was fortunate enough to live in Hawaii and Oregon, and we did a lot of hiking, a lot of adventure-y kind of things, so I do love to draw animals that are ready for adventures. I also am kind of a homebody at the same time. I love to be cozy. I like to eat food, which I think is part of why my animals have food so much of the time. I don't know, but I guess if I can't eat all the food, I'm just gonna draw all the food. So, but also I get inspired from my family members. I have a lot of nieces and nephews, and some of my characters have little traits from them, little isms. One of my raccoon characters, Max, he is in space planet pajama pants, and my nephew wears pajama pants all the time. And so that was just a little thing that I thought I could make a character out of that idea. And also a lot of the time I put a little bit of myself into my characters. Sometimes it's not like every characteristic of myself, but I can take, you know, an emotion that I'm feeling and focus it into that character as like their primary overriding personality trait. This is another raccoon example, but I have the raccoon holding the newspaper, and he's looking very irritated. And at the time, I was feeling very frustrated about something political. And I just thought, how funny would it be to draw a raccoon kind of like rolling his eyes at a newspaper. And it's actually a little bit funny because I think I started drawing him, this is before I was really focusing on drawing expressions, and I had drawn his face and he ended up looking like really kind of irritated, but I think it came out through what I was feeling just like automatically. And then I was like, he's gonna be holding a newspaper. So I get inspiration from little things like that, life experiences, things I notice that I think are funny. I do try to add a little bit of humor to my pieces, so sometimes it's just a matter of what will make this piece funnier. I drew an armadillo recently holding a popsicle, and it's just very random, but happy. And I think it's nice for people to see things that are happy in their Instagram feed and have happy things to hang in their homes. Also, I do get inspiration, and not necessarily from my animal characters, but I get inspiration from other current illustrators. I follow a lot of illustrators online, and I recently got a few books, and I love flipping through them and looking at all the different textures that are used, and just seeing the way that they tackle even the page arrangements, things like that. I also love movies, and some of the movies I find most inspiring for different reasons are, one of my favorite movies is Song of the Sea, and it is just magical, and I love the aesthetic. I love the watercolors in the background, and even though it's like a very different style than what I do, the story just to me kind of transports you, and I love that. I also, one of my favorite movies is Iron Giant. I did not see this until I was an adult, and I remember this movie coming out when I was a kid, and I remember seeing a commercial for it on TV, or maybe like, you know, before one of my movies I was watching, because I used to do that. And I remember being like really scared of it, like when I was little, and so I never saw it. And I love the story. I actually really love the animation. It's very inspiring for me as far as people and working people into stories. Yeah. Another one artistically that I love is Isle of Dogs, Wes Anderson. I also love Fantastic Mr. Fox. Every shot in these movies is just a work of art, and I love his sense of humor, and yeah, I really enjoy his movies. Also, oh, that's not the one I meant to grab. Also, I love Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs too. The backgrounds, when they get to like the jungly area, I just love the colors, and everything just feels so whimsical and magical, and these food creatures are really fun. That's a fun challenge, is to try to draw something that's not living and create it into a character, and they've obviously just done that so well in this movie. It's just so full of imagination, and I really enjoy that movie. And then as far as when I'm feeling a little bit more poetic or more serious, I don't know. I love My Fair Lady. And I love Pride and Prejudice, Sense and Sensibility, Emma, all those movies. I love movies with great costumes. That's very inspiring to me lately. I've been trying to draw more people. So yeah, sometimes when I'm needing some inspiration for something like that, I might pop in one of these movies while I sketch and just kind of try to figure things out that way and do some experimentation. Another thing that kind of comes up when talking about where do I get my inspiration from is obviously there are all of these media things, whether they're movies or books or Instagram, and they do inspire me. And when I am, you know, feeling kind of like I don't know what to draw, sometimes I just start drawing something I feel really comfortable drawing. But what was happening, and I've talked about this in a video a long time ago, but when I was in college, I found that whenever there was a new project that needed to be done, we got a new assignment, and we'd all sit down, and everyone was going on Pinterest and was like gonna find their inspiration on Pinterest. And basically all of their work ended up looking very similar, because not only were they going to Pinterest and trying to like kind of emulate something they'd seen, they were doing it together, and so then it kind of ended up looking similar to each other. And I really butted against that because I did not want to fall into that problem. So when I say inspiration, I usually mean like I want to go to something that's going to get my creative juices flowing. Not that I'm going to copy the character of Eliza Doolittle, draw her just like this, and pretend that she's my own character. Or that I'm going to draw Peter Rabbit almost exactly as he is. Now, there is such a thing as fan art that people do now. But from my experience, I have had some people who have copied me like very, very closely. And I think that maybe they're doing it for like the purposes of learning, which is totally fine. But then when it gets shared on social media, it feels like more of like claiming it as their own, especially if they're not like saying something like, you know, in reference to me. So when thinking about, you know, inspiration, I think it's important to either, yes, like if you're thinking about drawing animals, go to nature, go to you know, field guides, studies of, you know, study some pictures of that animal, and then you're going to come up with something more original than if you're thinking, oh, I want to draw a starfish character. I remember seeing this person draw a starfish character. I'm going to go look at that and see how I can make it like theirs. But like I said, when I was trying to figure out what am I drawn to as far as the way that animals' bodies are made, or the way that clothes go on the animals, there's a lot of people who've come before me who've done that kind of thing, like Beatrix Potter and character designers for movies and things like that. So it's worth picking out things that you think work really well, that you gravitate towards, but always bringing it together to make your own thing. So I hope that this has been kind of interesting for you guys to see a little insight into my process. I don't get all these things out every time that I draw by any means. This is just kind of me dumping everything on you that I have that I use for inspiration, but yeah, it's great to have resources. It's great to expose yourself to a lot of different styles and to experiment. When I was first starting out illustration, I would have just my sketchbook and a pen, and I would do like, you know, the scribble line, and then I'd have to make it into something else. So I would like close my eyes and scribble something and try to make it into a finished drawing. And that was kind of cool because I didn't have any kind of reference point for, oh, this needs to look like monkey on a tricycle, but it might end up being drawn into that, you know? So that's a great way too. I mean, you know, you might not come up with like the most serious, refined piece that way, but it'll at least get you drawing, and it'll help you to get something on the paper and get started, because for me that's the biggest part, is I just keep putting off getting started until I just haven't drawn in a few days or something like that. So don't be afraid to mess up your sketchbook and experiment and try new things. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this little art chat, and I would love if you would like and subscribe. I want to say a huge thank you to my patrons. As usual, you guys are amazing, and I am only $89 away from my goal. So if you would like to support me there and also get a discount to my shop, exclusive videos, pictures from my sketchbook that I don't share anywhere else, and a print in the mail, head down to the link below, to the Patreon link, and you can subscribe for as little as $1 a month, and it really helps me. So thank you. Have a great day.